Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking what looks like just a simple piece of metal and elevating it into a critical piece of life-saving technology by breaking down the 5 essential rules for using lifting shackles.
Look, we've got to establish the massive stakes riding on this little piece of hardware right out of the gate. Dropped loads, equipment failure, serious accidents. These aren't just safety buzzwords, right? When a shackle fails due to incorrect use or the wrong capacity, it doesn't just damage materials. It can completely shut down a site, or worse, cost lives.
It really all boils down to that old, undeniable truth. A lifting operation is only as strong as its weakest link. Seriously, you could have a highly trained crew and flawless million-dollar crane machinery, but if one tiny overlooked shackle fails, the entire operation comes crashing down.
So, here is our roadmap for the explainer. First, small metal, massive stakes. Then, choose the right type, capacity and clear markings, inspecting for red flags, correct shackle installation, and finally, we'll zoom out to the complete lifting system. Let's get into it.
All right, part 1, small metal, massive stakes.
You know, what's genuinely fascinating to me is how the shackle acts as the ultimate connector. It's the literal, physical barrier between a beautifully controlled lift and a total disaster. It is the junction point connecting the load to the sling to the hook, and it manages the tension of chains, wire ropes, and heavy lifting beams.
Moving right along to part 2, choose the right type.
Because the shape totally dictates how it distributes force. Take a D shackle, sometimes called a chain shackle. That is designed strictly for straight inline pulls. If you pull it from the side, it's going to warp. On the flip side, a bow shackle or anchor shackle has that wider, rounded belly. That gives you the room and the structural integrity for multiple sling legs and angular movement. You must know the forces at play before you pick the shape.
And hey, just as important as the body is the pin itself. You're basically choosing between a temporary screw pin or a heavily secured bolt-type pin. A screw pin, totally fine for quick, temporary lift if you tighten it right. But if there's repeated use, any sort of vibration, or a risk of a sling rotating on the pin, that bolt-type pin, secured with a nut and cotter pin, is absolutely non-negotiable to prevent it backing out mid-lift.
So, the golden rule here? Never, ever just grab a shackle because it looks like the right size. You've got to evaluate the specific application. Ask yourself, is this load strictly in line? Is there going to be vibration? If you aren't 100% certain about the lift parameters, you stop the job and ask.
Okay, on to part 3, capacity and clear markings.
Before we go any further, let's demystify these acronyms. WLL, working load limit, and SWL, the safe working load. You absolutely must be able to read these limits plainly, right along with the size and traceability certification, stamped directly into the metal. That tells you the absolute maximum safe force this specific piece of hardware is engineered to withstand.
But keep in mind, it is never enough to just know the static weight of the load, right? You have to account for these hidden physics factors that literally multiply the stress on your hardware. Things like sling angles, for instance. Tension spikes dramatically as those angles get wider. Throw in multiple legs, unexpected side loading, or the dynamic shock of a swinging lift, and suddenly the actual force on that metal is way higher than the static weight of the object itself.
This is absolutely crucial. If you can't read the limits on the shackle, or, and we've all seen this, if someone has clearly swapped out the original pin for some random bolt from a toolbox, you stop immediately. Let me be incredibly clear. A random piece of threaded rod is never, ever an acceptable substitute. No legible marking, no lift.
Which brings us to part 4, inspecting for red flags. All right, so you've got the right type, you've confirmed the capacity, but before you even think about rigging it up, you need to ask yourself, what specific physical damages am I actually scanning for here?
Think of it this way. A bent shackle is telling you a story of past overload. A damaged thread? That means the pin could strip under tension. You are actively hunting for deep corrosion, hairline cracks, heavy wear, or a body that's just been pulled wider than its original shape. Spot any of these red flags, even a shadow of a doubt, and that shackle needs to be removed from service immediately.
Part 5, correct shackle installation.
This right here is your definitive installation protocol to stop that pin from rotating or backing out when the pressure's on. First, the correct original pin has to be fully inserted. Second, it's got to be correctly tightened. And third, the collar of the pin needs to be properly seated flush against the body of the shackle.
And remember, a shackle has a correct direction of loading, and you've got to respect it. Avoid twisted slings and side loading at all costs. You do not want sling legs pressing against the sides of the shackle body. Oh, and please, don't force several thick slings into a shackle that's just too small. That pinching creates twisting forces, and it will inevitably cause the pin to rotate and fail.
Finally, Part 6, the complete lifting system.
Look, even if your hardware selection and installation are totally flawless, a shackle doesn't exist in a vacuum. It relies on a whole ecosystem working in perfect harmony. We're talking about controlling the center of gravity, sticking to the lifting plan, and keeping communication crystal clear. Literally everyone, from the rigger on the ground to the crane operator and supervisor, plays a massive part in keeping that load stable.
Because at the end of the day, a safe shackle in a bad lifting operation is still incredibly dangerous. If the area isn't properly barricaded or someone's standing right under the suspended load, the strongest shackle on Earth isn't going to prevent a tragedy. If it's badly slung or the center of gravity isn't controlled, it doesn't matter how robust the hardware is.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to remember this core philosophy. In lifting operations, safety absolutely starts with the smallest details. Wrong type, missing markings, damaged hardware, sloppy installation, you do not lift. Period. It's not just an accessory. It is literally your critical lifeline between a smooth operation and a total disaster.
I'll leave you with this final thought to take onto your next job site. Ensure every single detail has been interrogated before a heavy load ever leaves the ground. A single shackle can change everything about your day, your project, and your life. So ask yourself, is your weakest link truly secure?